everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Sean Kennedy, and
Martha Cantu. Hello.
and we're back. We're in a different setting, but this is what we look like with legs and a body, so get used to it.
No.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking a look at chapters, 13 through 17 today, I believe, or 14.
I think it's 14.
14 through
yes.
17, excuse me. This is a doozy. We're going to get punched quite a bit going through this. So all trigger warnings out there. If it's too much, please step away from the computer. You could step out altogether, because what we're going to be going over, unfortunately, is going to be all too relevant to perhaps to some people listening. So I'm very sensitive to that. And I'm going to really try to do what I can to really bring some dignity to what we're about to go through here, because it's difficult. I'm traumatized just reading this stuff here. I thought we would start by going back to chapter 7, the lover. So if you do have your text in front of you, no big deal if you don't, but if you want to go back to follow along, starting it to set the scene here, right? So this goes back to when she falls in love with this carpenter and devises a plan that perhaps she can marry him and get free, and she realizes that's not going to work whatsoever. It has to leave this lover. So she opens up this chapter with the following: why does the slave ever love? Why allow the tendrils of the heart to twine around objects which may at any moment be wrenched away from the hand of violence? When separations come by the hand of death, the pious soul can bow in resignation and say, quote, "Not my will, let thine be done, O Lord," unquote. But when the ruthless hand of a man strikes the blow, regardless of the misery he causes, it is hard to be submissive. I did not reason thus when I was a young girl. Youth will be youth. I loved and I indulged the hope that the dark clouds around me turn out a bright lining. I forgot that in the land of my birth, the shadows are too dense for light to penetrate. A land, quote, where laughter is not mirth, nor thought the mind, nor words a language, not even mankind, where cries reply to curses, shrieks to blows, and each is tortured in a separate hell. This is definitely setting the scene for what we're about to read. And things have already been real for Harriet, Linda, her pseudonym, but they are about to get incredibly real in some profound ways that get really at the heart of the suffering that she and millions of other people are enduring. Please, Martha, is there anything that you'd like to add here?
So when you were reading that, the lover, she was saying that youth will be youth. I loved and indulged the hope that the dark clouds around me would turn out a bright lining. So what I think about that is that, yes, and also youth is ignorance. It's blissful ignorance, and youth is also innocence. Is mostly what I wanted to get to, that she was very innocent in her youth, thinking that she was going to, she was going to have that fairy tale ending, right? That she was going to get married to this free, even as a slave, she had dreams and hopes and innocent, it's like many of our students, our young students that have all these ideas of what their life is going to be. And then of course, when she's writing this, she's much older, right? And she's in the North. So she can look back at the innocence of her youth and the daydreams and her first love, and understand that it was just a fleeting dream and idea, painfully so.
And what's really sad about that is a lot of you are probably around this age. This is a magical time of your life. And for that to be robbed under these circumstances is, it's so perplexing and tragic. And yeah, this is what much of the story is about, is youth stolen, the magic that comes with that, and how fleeting it is. And if you're not in a setting where you can enjoy it, it is a life of misery.
Right.
Yeah, anything, to begin with So what's striking you when we're looking at chapter 14, another link to life?
So in another link to life, what that means that she once again has become pregnant, and that she had not, so just to set the stage, she did belong to the Flints, right? But she had not gone back to the Flints because Dr. Flint, right? That's how we're gonna separate the two, Dr. Flint and Mr. Flint. The
Yes.
son is,
The son is
the-
Mr. Flint,
yes, the
yes.
son will be Mr. Flint. And Dr. Flint is her owner, or Dr. Flint's daughter is her owner, but he has custody of her, I guess is how you would say that. But had not gone back to Dr. Flint's house because the wife did not want to see her, right? Dr. Flint's wife had said, if you bring her back, I'm gonna kill her. Because Dr. Flint's wife is very jealous of Harriet Jacobs or Linda. And so the doctor knows better. And so even in his craziness, I guess it's out, everyone knows that Dr. Flint is in love with Harriet Jacobs, with Linda. And so his wife knows, like, you better not bring her here. Because I guess she also might have had suspicions, like, whose child is this, right? Because
It's a
no
good
one
point.
has really come up to say, oh, they're Mr. Sam's children,
Mhm.
right? Because then Mr. Sam's would be also in trouble, right? And so it might be that Dr. Flint has his Mrs. Flint has her doubts about who's the child, and she doesn't want Linda, Harriet back in their house. So she's been staying at her grandmother's house. Well, now she has become pregnant again, and Dr. Flint is very upset. And so my first note here is that on page 68, says, sometimes when my master found that I was still refused to accept what he called his kind offers, he would threaten to sell my child. Perhaps that will humble you, said he. Humble me, was I not already in the dust? But his threat lacerated my heart. I knew the law gave him power to fulfill it. For slaveholders have been cunning enough to enact that the child shall follow the condition of the mother, not the father, thus taking care that licentiousness shall not interfere with avarice. So I found that very sad that the slave owner can be licentiousness and avaricious at the same time,
Feed
right?
each other.
And
So
so,
licentiousness is like lust, avarice is greed, just to make
Right.
sure we get. the
so
language
both
clear.
things can coexist, right? He can
It's built into the system.
right, and so the slave owner can father children and then sell them, do both, right? So
Yeah,
that's what
brutalize
she
them,
means by that.
Yeah, and just to kind of harken, we're going to need this in this reading to go back to the beginning of Another Link to Life. Humility is a big part of this chapter, and degradation. But she opens it up basically. The feminist old retrobate had no need of discanting of that theme. I felt humiliated enough. Sorry, I lost the line there. So just retrograde. I mean, that's like a doddering old fool, right? And so she's just basically, this guy is trying to say, I need some humility. Look at this guy.
Yeah. And so that was one of my thoughts there, right? That they could both coexist. And what Professor Kennedy was saying that we're going to kind of get into, and that they're very hard topics, is the domestic abuse that she will experience. And I guess I see it as domestic abuse because it is, they had a relationship, even though it was like, what would you call, like a
Well,
tenuous, illicit?
It's just power. He has power over her, so that's the relationship. Yeah, they have this twisted power dynamic, and so yeah, this is absolutely domestic abuse here. This is the same thing as if they were lawfully married and in love at one point, which is not the case at all here.
Right.
But I mean, this is the exact same thing.
Right. So he's threatening to sell the children, which is also part of that traumatization that has been like a theme in all of our conversations. The traumatization, it'll come up again when she goes into hiding, but the traumatization. So then she writes, humble me, was I not already in the dust? But his threat lacerated my heart. I knew the law gave him power. So I've already read that, but when she becomes pregnant, right? What does he do to her?
It's her hair.
Yes, so when Dr. Flint learned that I was again to be a mother, this is again, she's going to have another child with Mr. Sands, he was exasperated beyond measure. He rushed from the house and returned with a pair of shears, of scissors, right? I had a fine head of hair, and he often railed about my pride of arranging it nicely. He cut every hair close to my head, storming and swearing all the time. I replied to some of his abuse, and he struck me. Some months before, he had pitched me down the stairs in a fit of passion, and the injury I received was so serious that I was unable to turn myself in bed for many days. He then said, Linda, I swear by God, I will never raise my hand against you again. But I knew that he would forget his promise. So that's
Abuse, we've got gaslighting, this phony contrition here. That he
right.
knows even in real time, he's unable to be apologetic in a sincere way.
Right. So in this passage has all the markings of domestic abuse, of I will never hit you again, I will never do that again. And of course, she knows by this time that that is not going to be the case. But the hair, right? I think there's a scripture in the Bible that says the hair is like the crowning of the woman or something like that, or like the vanity. So he wants to strike her. Not only does he strike her physically, but emotionally and like her self-esteem, right? Where can you imagine a woman just being, like her hair just all cut away to just inflict more psychological pain to her, which is what he is doing there.
And then I'd like to see your thoughts here, Martha. On the fourth day after the birth of my babe, he entered my room suddenly and commanded me to rise and bring my baby to him. The nurse who took care of me had gone out of the room to prepare some nourishment. I was alone. There was no alternative. I rose up, took up my babe, and crossed the room where he sat. Now stand there, said he, till I tell you to go back. My child bore a strong resemblance to her father and to the deceased Mrs. Sands, her grandmother. He noticed this, and while I stood before him, trembling with weakness, he heaped upon me and my little one with every vile epithet he could think of. Even grandmother in her grave did not escape his curses. In the midst of his dissertations, I fainted at his feet. This recalled him to his senses. He took the baby from my arms, laid it on the bed, dashed cold water in my face, took me up, and shook me violently to restore my consciousness before anyone entered the room. Just then, my grandmother came in and hurried out of the house. I could speak as a father listening to this, but as a mother, what's going through your thoughts when you're hearing about this type of abuse? This is it's all across the lines, but.
All right, so it goes back to the jealousy and the fury that he feels that he wants to have like complete control of her, but he doesn't. And so that's where like his rage and anger, come out, and they strike her physically and, emotionally, verbally. It's all kinds of abuse, right? It's verbal, physical, emotional. And he's looking at the baby, right, to see who does this child look like, right?
He
Who's
knows.
and then it dawns on him like, oh, I see the resemblance to Mr. Sands, to his mom, because it's the baby's a girl,
Mhm.
which we'll get back to, just the total horror for Harriet Jacobs that it is a girl, because she is a girl. And she's like, you know,
Slavery's bad for men, but it's more terrible for
yes,
women.
which I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think about that, Sean? That it says, when they told me, back on page 68 in the bottom, when they told me my newborn babe was a girl, my heart was heavier than it had ever been before. Slavery is terrible for men, but it is far more terrible for women. Superadded to the burden common to all, they have wrongs, meaning they, women, they have wrongs and sufferings and mortifications peculiarly their own. So slavery is not experienced the same way for men as it is for. So that's like
Yeah.
part of the gender. We can maybe get a gender
Yeah.
someone here.
And it's, in
Gender
this book
studies.
certainly makes that bare, that this is far worse for women. They not only are expected to be doing the toil of the work, right? They're subjected to this horrible abuse from cowardly men
Mhm.
who are lost in hate. And the only thing they're able to endure it is and the advantage that these enslaved women have that I'm seeing over and over is their strength is coming derived from love. And
Right.
it's getting them through this, in this dystopia horror show here.
Right, so not only are females, like she knows that females, and she'll talk about it when they sell her children, a young female coming into like, you know, her teen years is gonna be worth more because she can have, you know, produce more children that are once again gonna follow the condition of the mother, and they're going to be therefore slaves. So they will be reproducing slaves for their masters.
So this chapter goes on, and we get into a new kind of complexity, right to the core of people's identity here. Children have no claim to any legal name, and this is troubling to her. And her name that she's associated with is her enslaver. And this is affecting even the foundations of their faith. They literally have to sneak in to baptize the child.
Right.
And this is just kind of highlighting this terrible situation these people are in. And then it makes her reflect on her mother and when they were christened and how different it was. And just, it was imbued with love, their baptism.
Right.
And here they're sneaking in, they're hurried, it's ambiguous about the name, and it's, you know, and this gold chain is given, this gift is given, and this is traumatizing to Harriet. She's like, I don't care how pretty the chain is, I don't want any chains around my children.
Right, which I find it is like, I'm wearing a gold, I mean, that's not gold, but a chain today. And how, to me, this is, I don't have that, you know, connection to it. I don't have that background that.
Oh, yeah. Harriet was in this room with us. She'd be looking at your neck going, getting a little
why
tight.
would you put a chain on yourself?
Yeah.
You know, why would you? But so yeah, that to her, it's something that has so traumatized her, a chain, that she can't, you know, bear thinking about wearing that.
The triggers, that's just a trigger. It's just everything is flooding her head when she's seeing this.
When you were saying about the mom, that the mom had, the children, again, we've talked about how they get Christian names, or that they have their faith, right? They have, the church is one thing, but their personal faith is different. And how her mom baptized them, right, in church along with her father, and what a different experience was. But that just reminds me of how they did not have a uniform slave experience.
Yeah.
Right.
So
her mom baptized her, and the father was could work, right?
Mhm.
He hired himself out, I think, as long as he paid.
$200 a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the varying degrees and differences, I guess, is something that kind of just jumped out at me there, that it's not one uniform monolithic slave narrative for everyone.
Yeah, and that's quite interesting. I wonder how much it has to do with the times in which people are living in. Because, the beginning of the antebellum is when she's born, so imagining that's when she was christened.
Mhm.
I mean, it certainly has to do with their life circumstance, which was unusual in itself.
Yeah,
But I wonder if it was a more relaxed atmosphere prior to Nat Turner.
right. She does mention
Yeah.
that, Turner. We did
Yeah.
talk about that last.
So I think what we're witnessing here is kind of the nadir of slavery, where slave owners are tense. Things are getting, the political scene is crazy. Civil war is imminent, and
Right.
and to a slave owner, this is do or die, because if they lose this institution, not only do they lose their economic institution, which gives them all the wealth, but their very identity is tied into this.
Right. Mhm. Yeah. Political.
Yeah, the only
and-
thing left I'd like to say about just briefly in this chapter before we move on to the next one is, again, she's 19 years old.
Mhm.
This is a magical time for it should be a magical time for anybody, and it's completely robbed from her.
Mhm.
Yeah, continued persecutions. Well, it doesn't get any better.
No.
So she's continued with the threat of selling her children. These brats that will fetch me a handsome son, he says. He's
Mhm.
filled with contempt and hate. He values power over money, which is very problematic because no amount of money is going to suffice this man. He
Yeah.
will never give her up. And this is such a sense of defeat for her. And then we get, her children are traumatized, right? What makes that bad man come here so many times? Does he want to hurt us? I would clasp the dear boy in my arms, trusting that he would be free before he was old enough to solve the problem. Is she implying that maybe my son will murder this man?
Yeah, but she's also worried for her son, like
Yeah.
what's gonna happen to,
Yeah, I'm just that's that weird
Yeah.
contrite line there. Old enough to solve the problem, and the
Mhm.
problem is right in front of them.
Right.
And then it goes on, and then I'll ask what you think here too. Again, don't. So what sparks him again? I told him that I would. Oh, there's this guy from Texas that's thinking of buying her, and
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting, right? He basically confronts him and uses a very strange word here. What is that word he uses? He would be commissioned to buy me to begin with, sir. She don't belong to me. She's my daughter's, but he always throws that line out there.
Mhm.
And I have no right to sell her. I mistrust that you come here for her paramour, right? And that's like the object of love and lust,
Mhm.
right? So he's basically saying you're going to use her as a sex slave, right? Like you ain't getting her for sure now, right? And so he confronts her and says, "Hey, it looks like he mocks her, like that guy got tired of you, ha 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 ha," laughing in her face. And she has no idea what the heck he's talking about. Like she's never met this man. It's like, I guess he didn't want me.
Yeah.
And then he gets pissed.
Mhm.
And then this is where he says, this is basically where he grabs Benjamin and throws him across the room. And then we get introduced to this consistent theme, like she wishes he was dead. She wishes death on her daughter consistently through this chapter and the next chapters.
Yeah.
It's so tragic, overwhelming, really.
Right.
So you're seeing this. What are you thinking?
Well, when he is saying like, "Oh, he's tired of you," that's him in my mind. That's him voicing what he wants to hear.
Projection, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I told you, right? I told you, like,
So he's
I
telling
love
her.
you, and Mr. Sands is tired of you, and ha ha ha. Like in my mind, that's what he wishes, right? He wishes that had been the case, and that she like,
He'll be the white knight.
yeah, and that he's gonna
What a
crawl,
fool,
yeah,
what a
that
coward.
she's right, that she's
This
going
guy is
to.
so cowardly. It's so
Mhm.
pathetic.
And then he says, "You are mine, and you shall be mine for life. There lives no human being that can take you out of slavery. I would have done it, but you rejected my kind offer."
Gross.
So it's like trying to like corner her,
Mhm.
right? And saying, this is the only way out, but you rejected it, so, you know,
Gaslighting,
yeah. just-
classic
Yeah,
gaslighting. You do
I would
this.
have said.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
who, me? Yeah.
yeah,
And, I'm reading this, and if I had witnessed this and had any modicum of power, just as a white man with maybe some property, and witnessed a man doing this to a child, terrorizing a mother like this, I would hope I would have the strength and the fortitude to choke this man out. But,
Yeah.
I was talking to Simon earlier about this, and I'm thinking, in that moment, you've got to really think on your feet. How am I going to complicate the situation?
right.
If a dead master is only going to make her life much worse,
Mhm.
right? And so I would have to be in the presence of love and go, brother, I get why you're angry. It's
Mhm.
reasonable. Look at this.
Mhm.
She's disrespectful, but
Mhm.
let's just take it, all that kind of stuff. Deep breath,
Mhm.
man, let's go walk like
Right.
that. And to have that kind of fortitude is you've got to be at your A game when something
Right.
like this is going down. But it's sort of this mix of trying to integrate the masculine and the feminine energy at once, so both of those strengths are present for you so you can deal with the
Right.
situation. And it's just so traumatizing because everybody is powerless in this situation,
Mhm.
including him.
Mhm.
This guy's a coward and has no idea.
Yeah. So,
Oh, and then it goes on to where this girl Rose is in there. It's strange, right? He's uncomfortable with this girl
oh,
Rose
yes. Mhm.
there, tells her to get out.
But
So-
she won't do it.
Yeah,
So that also, it's strange that within all these dynamics, she remains a slave, but she's not his slave. So she doesn't have to listen to him, right?
that must piss him off.
So that's just kind of like we weren't there, we didn't live in that, but there were so many different
Yeah,
I guess power structures that like to
Stick.
obey.
like
Mhm.
it could be right in front of your eyes and you have no idea what's going on. Like
Right.
be confused, like why are people talking to each other
Yeah.
like this?
Mhm.
And I love this line right here. He says, how came this girl here? He exclaimed. What right had you allow it? And you knew I had sold her. I answered, this is my grandmother's home. And Rose came to see her. I have no right to turn anybody outdoors that comes for honest purposes. Another dig at him,
Right,
right? She's
right.
constantly doing that. And he catches it, but it's
Right,
like,
and he gave me the blow that would have fallen upon Rose if he had still been his slave. My grandmother's attention had been attracted by loud voices, and she entered in time to see a second blow dealt.
Grandma's gonna get pissed.
Yeah,
Get out of my house.
yes, get out of my house.
Go home and take care
right.
of your wife and children, and you will have enough to do without watching my family. You coward is basically what she's saying here.
Right,
And then she goes on. He's like, do you know who you're talking to?
right. And he threw the birth of my children in her face and accused her of sanctioning the life I was leading. So still, he's the one that is harassing and everything, but he's accusing her, right, of being a fallen woman, even though that he's caused her fall.
Disgusting. And I love that, is grandma's retort to him. She replied, yes, I know very well who I'm talking to. And again, you are a coward. Go home. Right, that was probably grandma at her highest right there. Such strength, and he left the house in a great rage. And I wish there's a great. Did you follow? You know who Steven Crowder is? He's a right-wing YouTuber. He goes around and he makes fun of college students who don't know quite enough, and he rhetorically destroys them. Right, but there was recent footage of him, ring camera, where he's berating his wife, literally 9 months pregnant and barefoot. And it's about over a car, and he's just saying, I need my pellets and I need my meat and I got my grill and the boys are coming. I need the car, right? And they're millionaires. They have one car, total control, right? And she's like, Steven, she's being very dignified. Steven, I'm taking the car. I'm going grocery shopping. I will get you those things. And it was so pathetic. There's this one line in there where he's like, something to the effect of, it's not enough. And he's like literally just a little boy, just so pathetic. And when I read this, he where is that? He left the house in a great rage. I looked at, I could just see him just storming off like a little boy and just being berated by this old woman.
Right.
And just told basically to his face that you are a coward, right? I know who I'm talking to. Look at you, you're pathetic. And it's just, that's what is, I think, lost in the text. It's this, it seems like, okay, guy's misguided. Obviously, he's full of hate, but there's almost like a sense of misguided strength here. It's not at all. This is pathetic.
Yeah.
This is a person lost who has no control, how to regulate his emotions, and just to be kind to people, right? He could still be the boss and all of that and all that comes with it, but this added dimension of over-the-top cruelty.
Kind of almost see him as a slave to his own.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so recognized by the enslaved people themselves that these people are lost. They don't get it. They are lost in hate. And the thing that we have over them is we are strong and committed to love. To get to the next chapter, this is probably one of those classic lines in this entire book here. The last paragraph of page 73, continued persecutions. His anger was ready to break loose, but he succeeded in curbing it and replied, "You have answered without thought, but I let you know there are two sides to my proposition. If you reject the, am I on the?
Yes.
I'm on the wrong one. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Well, okay, it has to do with what's happening here. He's basically saying you either come with me or I'm going to send you and your children off the plantation and your children will be broken, right? So she's saying, my grandmother was much cast down. I had my secret hopes, but I must fight my battle alone. So grandmother was saying, hey, I'll talk to them. You don't have to go there. Don't make this choice, right? And so she's like, no, I must fight my battle alone. I had a woman's pride and a mother's love for my children. And I resolved that out of the darkness of this hour, a brighter dawn should rise for them. My master had power and law on his side. I had a determined will. There is might in each. She's going to war.
All right.
She's done.
She's not gonna.
She ain't effing around.
And like we've talked about, she has agency, even though she is a slave.
Yeah.
She makes decisions, even within her limited power. She is making decisions that I am not going, because that's the proposition that he makes to her, which it is. So he went on to say, I have seen very little of you late, but my interest in you is unchanged. When I said I would have no more mercy on you, I was rash. Here he goes back to the I'm not gonna do this anymore, which we're gonna get to at the end, right? The domestic abuse. I recall my words, Linda. You desire freedom for yourself and your children, and you can obtain it only through me. So he is very cognizant of the fact that she wants,
complex,
that she wants freedom for her and her children. He's very cognizant of it. He knows it, and you can obtain it only through me. If you agree to what I'm about to propose, you and they shall be free. According to me, according to Dr.
That's
Flint,
not free.
right?
This is a loophole
There must
here.
be no communication of any kind between you and their father. I will procure a cottage where you and the children can live together. Your labor shall be light, such as sewing for my family.
How graceful.
Yes. Think of what is offered you, Linda. A home and freedom. So that's kind of like a twisted, like it's a lie.
Yeah,
It's not freedom. It's not freedom for her.
Not the freedom that the boxes. John Locke would have something to say about that kind of freedom.
Not the freedom that she wants.
Yeah.
The freedom that he wants to give her. Let the past be forgotten. If I have been harsh with you at times, your willfulness drove me to it. That is the classic gaslighting. You made me do this, right? It's your fault
I
that
think I remember
beat you.
saying that to my 6-year-old brother when I was 8.
That's again, not to make light of
No.
the terrible, domestic abuse.
But it's almost comical on its face.
Yes,
It's just like, do you hear yourself, man?
Right, right. You drove me to it. You know, I exact obedience from my own children, and I consider you as yet a child, which that's super disgusting because he wants her as a woman, but then supposedly still, considers her as a child, I guess, which is just total, like you said, that godlike complex.
Mhm.
So then he tells her, there's a bright side to my proposition. This is all can be
Mafioso.
Rainbows and unicorns, or it can be.
Can you get a Godfather backdrop
No.
with the kitty and everything? It's an offer you can't refuse.
Yes. And then this is what's going to precipitate the rest of her actions, right? You must either accept my offer, or you and your children shall be sent to your young master's plantation, there to remain till your young mistress is married, and your children shall fare like the rest of the Negro children. I give you a week to consider it. So again, and here, luckily for Jacobs, and not luckily, I'm on 73 at the bottom.
Okay.
That's what's going to precipitate her decision, right? When you said that her will, the last that you read about, that he has the law on his side and she has her determined will. Up until now, her children have not been introduced to slavery. And that is a testament, her willingness, her will, determined will not to, introduce her children into slavery. That is commendable, right? That's part of that agency that we've talked about her.
We're looking for American heroes in this
Yeah.
age where we're questioning Confederate hero statue.
Right.
Here we have a hero right
So
here.
she's not gonna allow her children to be like baptized into the slave condition, right? I'm looking, my brain is looking for that word, but that just, being introduced to it. She doesn't want that. So that's very powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, and towards the end of this chapter here, this is, we are getting short on time here, but when she finds out that her children are going to be sent to the plantation, even though the Flints, these lying, backstabbing people are telling her, no, you'll be united with them. Don't. And she finds out from a very kind individual, right? And she said, I hurried from the room, unable to thank him. My suspicions were correct. My children were to be brought to the plantation to be broken in. And this is the moment she's saying, I've got to get drastic here. I'm going to get really radical.
Right. And it's also to tie her to that plantation because she won't leave, right? So then 82 says, I saw through the plan. They thought my children's being there would fetter me to the spot. Like she's not going to leave after their children are there. And that it was a good place to break them in, right? Yeah. Which again, that kind of goes to, that's what precipitates her action. Like, no, my children will not be broken in. They will not be
her will is determined. There is might.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, anything from Scenes of the Plantation that I'd like to go
something
over?
I did write was the woman that goes to meet them, or when I had on page 77, when I had been working a month at the plantation, the great aunt of Mr. Flint came to visit him. And this was the good old lady who paid $50 for my grandmother for the purpose of making her free when she stood at the auction block. My grandmother loved this old lady whom we called Miss Fanny. She often came to take tea with us. So again, the relationships, everyone has a different relationship with enslaved and free, and she's the one that paid for the grandmother after she's old. Well, the grandmother is 50 something in this. Did you know that?
Oh, wow.
I'm 51. I'm thinking of an old like
Yeah.
but yeah, the grandmother's 50 something. But of course also the life they led. That just
They would have looked different for sure. Yeah.
So but what was I gonna say? So this grandmother, they have tea time. They love the cream that the grandmother makes.
It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful scene in this midst of this horror.
And then Dr. Flint's wife would go, but then after Linda becomes the,
I don't want to have tea with.
Yes, which it said, I thought I wrote, but so on page 77 at the bottom. But after I became an object of her jealousy and spite, speaking of Dr. Flint's wife, she was angry with grandmother for giving a shelter to me and my children. She would not even speak to her in the street. This wounded my grandmother's feelings, for she could not retain ill will against the woman whom she had nourished with her milk when a babe. So what I think is how even as a slave, a former slave, the grandmother has feelings, right? Her feelings get hurt because Dr. Flint's wife won't even turn to say hello to her. Those just very human and like raw emotions, right? That
yeah, in the face of this such childish behavior, it's like,
right.
What was grandmother supposed to do? Turn her granddaughter and her great grandchildren out? This is ridiculous. Yeah. The graveyard scene is very moving. Right. So she returns to her parents' grave. I went to make this vow at the graves of my poor parents in the burying ground of the slaves. Quote, there the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. There the prisoners rest together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor. The servant is free from the master. I knelt by the graves of my parents and thanked God, and I had often done before, and they had not lived to witness my trials or to mourn over my sins. I had received my mother's blessings when she died, and in the many an hour of tribulation, I had seemed to hear her voice, sometimes chiding me, sometimes whispering loving words into my wounded heart. Wow. I have shed many bitter tears to think that when I am gone from my children, they cannot remember me with such entire satisfaction as I remember my mother. And then she just goes this, just to jump down to the next paragraph. My trust in God had been strengthened by the prayer among the graves.
Right. So again, going back to our faith and how,
it's mystical.
Yeah.
She's there in this grave in communion with her dead parents. It's just
and she hears her father's voice come from it, bidding me not to tarry till I reach freedom or the grave. So it's almost like she says she heard her father's voice saying, you need to go.
This is a voice of love coming to her.
All right.
Yeah. So in the time remaining, I guess, unless there's anything else that you'd like to touch on.
We're good.
Yeah, the flight. We could touch on the flight a little bit here.
Is that in the next chapter? Were we supposed to get to that chapter?
No, that's okay. Yeah, let's take a look at the chat. So I'm going to walk over there and I'll read them. Nothing? Okay.
Do y'all have any questions?
Yeah, any questions? You can open up your mic if you like. You can get us in chat. Anything in here that you would like to, any insight, any questions? Yeah. It's powerful stuff that we took a look at here today. Nothing. Okay. Well, we could touch on the flight. That is an interesting chapter.
She decides to flee again because, like you said, that they're the threat of her children, and like I said, she doesn't want them introduced to slavery, and so that's what steals her heart, right? To to leave, it nerved me to immediate action.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes off and
Like a conversation with Sally.
mhm.
And it really just puts us in gives us awareness of how much of a rock and a hard place she is in. She explains to Sally the situation. Sally's like, yeah, I guess you do need to run off.
Part of what I also see is like the whole, almost like in a movie that preparations are made to kind of throw off the people that are, she knew that take my clothes from the trunk,
Yeah.
put them over here because this is gonna be the logical, like there was actual thought and planning.
Very
That
premeditated.
was, yes, and so how what she needed to do,
Mhm.
right? And then the $300 reward, we've seen them in the,
It's an
when we
interesting
teach,
description.
right, so $300 reward, ran away from the subscriber, and intelligent, so,
He recognizes that.
yes, an intelligent, bright mulatto girl named Linda, 21 years of age, 5 feet 4 inches, dark eyes, and black hair inclined to curl, the same curls that he cut, but it can be made straight.
Hmm.
Has a decayed spot on a front tooth. She can read and write, and in all probability will try to get to the free states. All persons are forbidden under penalty of law, which that goes back to the laws of the South at the time, to harbor or employ said slave. So not only can you not hide her, you can't employ her.
Mhm.
$150 will be given to whoever takes her in the state, and $300 if taken out of state and delivered to me or lodged in jail, Dr. Flint.
Wow.
So,
Let's come to this.
yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. Any chats come in? Yeah, let us know, students, what you're thinking. I'm sure there's quite a bit to take in here. We'll be putting in the sign-in sheet in a little bit, and we will also, we could go ahead and put the domestic national hotline with the website in the chat right now.
Right, so we want, Sean and I were talking about how a lot of this leads or shows domestic violence, and how in any age, whether it's the 1830s or 2024, that is completely unacceptable. And if if any of you have experienced that, then there is someone you can talk to, and no one, and just like we were talking about Dr. Flint, it's like you drove me to it, you caused this. That is such a lie.
That's insanity.
And it's insanity, and no one deserves to be mistreated, to be abused. Today I was reading about Banda, the woman Banda that was murdered by her, well, he's on trial in Edinburgh right now, and I think his last name is Ford. And she had called police, she had put a protective order, she had done all, and yet it cost her her life. And I was thinking about that it's still very much a problem for us as a society, right? Domestic abuse. And so we just wanted to reach out and mention, that no one deserves to be treated cruelly, abused, physically, emotionally, verbally. And so there is help for you all. And understand that it is not normal. It should not be accepted. And please reach out.
Yeah. On the flip side of it too, it's not exclusive to men, young men, or just men alike, but to be real, I mean, this is mainly a problem that men have.
Mhm.
Not being able to regulate their emotions, finding almost like their love is almost an exercise of being in battle, and not understanding that you are engaged in a relationship, and the point is to witness and celebrate the mystery in front of you, which is all people have a mystery about them. If any, and I'll put myself in this camp, this is something that we are sort of raised with as men in this culture, to rage out, to have the ridiculous idea that when I'm angry, that's an indication that I'm thinking that this is a place where I should get what I want, when I want, and however I want it. And that is ridiculous. That is the definition of insanity. This is a place where sometimes you get what you want, but you'll never get what you want unless you are living in the presence of love. And if you find yourself raging at someone you love, whether it's a girlfriend, a wife, your sister, your mother, right? There is an alternative, right? Humility, the recognition that you need them and they need you, and really just approaching this with love, empathy, and dignity. So it's not it's something you can reverse, it's something you can change course with.
Right, and I would add that, that isn't love when someone, is in any way abusive towards you. That recognize that it's not love, and that you owe it to yourself to have self-love, self-respect, and care for yourself and others, because if you allow yourself to be abused by others, that's also causing hurt to the ones you love. And like today, when I was reading the article on the woman that died, I cannot speak to her life. All I can say is that she left 2 children, and
She did it for them.
now that is affecting them.
Yeah.
Right. So there's help. I hope that if anyone is in that unfortunate circumstance, that they would ask for help.
And what we see here is that story unfold. None of this is love. This guy is full of hate, and he's confused. He wants to love her, and although it's out of the picture, he's not going to ever have this romantic sexual relationship that he's trying to pester and coerce her throughout this entire text. But what he's missing is, this sounds like an amazing person, Harriet, and he missed that great side of her. And if they could have had intellectual conversations and talked about the makings of the family and celebrated together in the limited capacity that would be available to them within this institution of slavery. So this is where one can have a sense of empathy for this Dr. Flint. This is a confused, scared, hurt little boy trapped in a man's body.
All right. Is there something in the?
It was one.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I understand her desperation.
What year was the book written?
I mean, no, what year did this take place, the story take place?
In the 1830s.
Yeah, she's born in 1819, I believe,
Mhm.
or maybe or 1812, 1813. She's born. But yeah, a lot of this is probably taking place in the late 1820s, well, it's a little after the 1831.
Yeah.
This is after Nat Turner, so this is in the probably mid 30s, 1830s.
Yeah, and then she'll be writing against the fugitive slave law, which was passed in 1850. But
And the reason I ask is that it just popped into my head, $300 as a reward.
Mhm.
And I thought, what is that in today's amount of money?
Did you look it up in the inflation calculator?
So, yeah, it's about $10,000 in today's amount.
so that would.
That's a great incentive for a lot of poor white people in the surrounding areas of this
Mhm.
plantation,
Mhm.
because that would change their lives forever. Which is, again, it's baked into the system, this cruelty, this oppression. Chat came in. I understand her desperation to leave her children without, her desperation to leave without her children, sorry, is something I can't fathom, right? Yeah,
I think she did it for her children.
yeah.
She didn't want her children to be taken to the plantation, to be broken in.
brutalized.
Yeah, and so if you read ahead, she in my opinion, right? And so she leaves to try because she doesn't want her children broken in, sent to the plantation, which it effectively stops her children from being sent to the plantation, because then it'll open the door for her children to be sold to the father. And that's something that we'll talk about next week, that he is their father, but yet he has to buy them because she is a slave. So the mom is a slave, so he needs to buy
I
them.
forget where that is, but she talks about just how complicated the lineage is for the
Yes.
slave.
Mhm.
It's just,
Mhm.
and it is like you would really, to get this straight, you would have to have a board and string to get all the
Yeah.
relations situated here, because it's multifaceted and complicated, right? Yeah. Well, unless we have another, nope, no other chats in, so I think we're gonna be right on the mark here, about 5 o'clock. We could wait maybe a couple more minutes. Yeah, we'll put in the sign-in sheet, so sign in away, everybody. And do let us know if you have trouble signing in. You shouldn't have to sign into the document, but if you have trouble opening it. Yeah,
So yeah, when you were saying that if it was love, I told you that I watched Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates,
yeah.
and I want to say that it was Jay Johnson's family, but it might have been a different African American guest, that the slave owner does leave his white wife to live with the former enslaved person, and
Jeez.
will end his day. So it might have happened in that case that he does fall in love with her and will leave, that person left his white family to go live with the
I would get I get the sense, given the shame that she felt with just having this affair with Mr. Sands and all that came with that, that under no circumstances, if he had left his wife and was really kind and loving to her, just the whole situation, she'd be like, I can't be part of this. I get the sense that she would have this sense of dignity where, and no shame to this woman who married her master. It's really, what choice did she have?
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, I think she would be, no. Again,
Yeah.
he would be back to his angry self again. Yeah. Okay, I guess we will call it a wrap here. Thank you guys very much. We could stay just a little bit in case I don't see that anybody's having trouble. Nobody's getting in the chat right now. So we'll stay in for maybe another minute, just to see if somebody's about to ready to type and let us know if there are problems. So yeah, next week, what are we looking at? Chapters 18 through 26 or something like that?
For the next, it'll be March 26th, right? It'll be after spring break that will be coming back.
And then we will be having Nihan in here from sociology. She will be giving basically an analytical look from a sociological perspective on this. And man, no pressure, Nihan, if you're out there. There is a lot here. An hour probably isn't going to suffice. This is rich with the elements of sociology, just looking at the patriarchy, looking at slavery, race, gender, the economy, capitalism, her upbringing, not finding out she was a slave until she was 6 years old. I mean, it should be a very interesting conversation. Okay, we will call it quits there. Thank you guys very much.
Guys.
Yeah,
Y'all
have a good afternoon, and we'll see you
Bye-bye.
later.